Hello and welcome to the Annie Altman Show, the podcast, season 5. Welcome to the second episode in the Compassion C series. Today I'm here with Ryan Gibson talking about compassion and trust. Ryan teaches acro. He has a very cool movement history involving football and cheerleading and gymnastics and all of the things he performs. He was in the Navy for 8 years, no big deal. And we are podcasting Hawaii to San Diego. Thank you so much for being here.
Absolutely. Happy to be here. Thanks for having me on.
We met in Santa Monica a year ago, a year and a half ago even. And here we are getting to podcast.
Yeah. Crazy world.
Crazy world. Crazy world. I would love for you to share a little in your own words about how you got into acro and movement.
Yeah. So back in high school and college, I played football, wrestled, and I was a cheerleader also. And that's where a lot of my movement background started. And then, got in the Navy, did 8 years in the Navy. And when I got out of the Navy and moved back to San Diego, I took my daughter into a circus school. And while at the circus school, they asked me to assist in, a class that revolved around basically like basket toss type things. And so I was like, absolutely, I've done this before. So got into that, and one of the teachers took me down to what was called an acro jam. So, which is just a bunch of people just doing acrobatics, acro yoga, down at the beach. And so, went down there and started, and I was immediately hooked. It was just so much fun. Everybody there was so nice and welcoming and, willing to share their knowledge. It was just such a great community. And I was like, okay, this is great. And there was a festival coming up, and it was called Acro Love, and it was held downtown San Diego. And boy, I just took to it, really quickly, picked up a lot of things. And one of the things that I really enjoyed the most was hand-to-hand, which is where, there's a base and a flyer, and the flyer does a handstand in the base's hands. So I was just hooked immediately, and I loved it. It was very similar to cheerleading. And so, I wasn't brand new to it. And so I found out that they offered classes to teach the basics, and it was really safe. And there were some really good instructors at the San Diego Circus Center. So through that, started training hand to hand. Eventually ended up, thanks to my buddy James Hugh, he got me into a performing group called Acro Army. Now, Acro Army had won third place in America's Got Talent in 2014. And so it was just this super elite, high level acrobatic group. And I was just happy to be training with them, let alone, come to find out we would be performing, internationally, coming up in the years to come. So that's kind of where, so I started really learning a lot, and then started teaching around 2016. So it was, around 2016, started teaching, from beginners all the way up through advanced, and started also coaching the sport acrobatic gymnastics, which my daughter is now in for the past, 4 or 5 years. And so it's just a really exciting sport. It's an exciting performance community. I can't get enough of it. I eat it up every chance I get.
I can so hear it in your voice and feel it with you, and remember getting to fly with you and feeling that same super steady and super excited and in it at the same time. And it's so cool to me that you did football and wrestling and cheerleading and acrobatics and all of these. You're like, yeah, that sounds fun. Ooh, that sounds fun too. Cool. Yeah, let's do that also.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. And my actual career is I'm in cybersecurity. So, after sitting in front of a computer all day long, it's nice to go out and, get some movement in some positive touch.
Totally. Do you ever feel like things translate between those two, where you take things you learn from one of those and find them playing out in the other?
Not really. I think that's probably why I like acrobatics so much. Is it is just pretty much the polar opposite of being in front of a computer all day, which I love. I love my career. I also love my acrobatics side hustle hobby. You know, all of that. It's a really great mix.
And getting to do both, it's like the same thing of not limiting yourself to, I'm just going to do wrestling or football or cheerleading.
Right. Yep.
And they don't have to overlap. Maybe sometimes the connection is their own
Yeah.
separateness.
Yeah, I've always tried to be multifaceted. I think it makes for a well-rounded individual, and it's just I'm such a social being that sitting in front of a computer all day, I get bottled up, and like I almost feel like when I get around people, it's just like nonstop talking, but I'm just excited to communicate.
Let all of that stuff out. It's like do a focused work or have time to figure out puzzles of cybersecurity and then have that social connecting
Yep,
interaction.
absolutely. Yeah, it's a great way to break away from the monotony of what can be the day-to-day hustle of cybersecurity expert.
The day-to-day, well, they're both their own,
Yeah.
their own sort of project.
Yep.
I'd love for you to share more about that excitement you were speaking of you're like, I first got exposed to acro and I was hooked and I was like this.
Yeah,
What
absolutely.
was that sort of feeling like?
So first of all, just getting to be around people, again, being social, and then, being able to work with people in movement, because, you watch these things like Cirque du Soleil, or, you're watching gymnastics, or you're watching these, Dancing with the Stars or whatever, and they're doing these crazy lifts, and it's just super fun. And then you go out there and you start doing some things, and and I see it now when I'm teaching, but I also had those amazing moments of like, oh my God, I can't believe that I just hit that skill. I can't believe that I was able to make my body do this with another human being. And then you get hooked on these things, and you start to chain them together, and it's just like everything that comes from it. It's its own art form, and it's just so exhilarating. Just when you get your first skill, especially when you go into it and you're not quite sure if you're going to be physically capable of doing something, and then you surprise yourself. And that is one of the things that I really love about acrobatics and the acro yoga and all these communities, is it's very accessible to anyone and everyone. I've seen people 80 years old doing acro yoga. I've seen people who are overweight but are looking to do some movement and just start to get healthy and just do anything that they can. And it's very accessible because while it does require physical physical action, it doesn't require like physical acumen. You don't have to be some elite athlete to be able to do these things. And it's just seeing some people when I'm coaching, or just in general, if we're out jamming even, people who had these really self-limiting beliefs, be empowered by this movement form. It's just exhilarating, and it makes me so happy, when you get to watch people and they just light up, and it's inspiring. And I've seen a lot of people's lives change through acrobatics. It's been just amazing.
It's so real in that moment of trusting yourself more, of trusting to bring this to all these themes of trust, which is so cool that with cybersecurity too, and trust and protection of trusting ourselves and the process that, well, maybe I can do this movement with my body at some point or in some way or with some person, or
Absolutely.
changing those beliefs that we have that are like, no, this is all my body can do and this is how life is all the time.
Yeah. And, it's the trust part is huge because generally there's a base and there's a flyer, and the flyer is up in the air, and you have to have the trust of the base that that person is going to do their best to keep you safe. And we also are we definitely are always telling people we want everybody to have spotters, because we want to be as safe as possible. And so you have to have trust in those people too. And these are the types of things that are very applicable to the real world. It's like just interpersonal relationships. It's like, you might have you and your partner, and then your spotter is your friend. It's like you have to have trust in these people. And it's very interesting watching our communities, how they evolve, and how communication filters through our communities, and some of the things, the difficulties, and some of the things that the obstacles that we overcome by being in a community. Even some people, if they didn't have acro, they might just be sitting at home, not doing anything and not getting interpersonal communication, because we live in an electronic world now, especially. So it's almost becoming a lost art form. So it's when you can physically get together with people, experience communication, and experience that positive touch. It's such a huge thing, and it just builds those bonds and it builds trust.
Totally. And like you're saying, practice trust through touch.
Yeah.
Like you were saying too before we were recording, about the experiences you have witnessed of people healing different PTSD related,
Right.
their own stories about trust and touch being safe from sexual assault and other
Yep.
unsafe touch. So to get to play that out in the real world of acro. And I love you seeing too this metaphor of how that plays out in the rest of our lives too.
Yeah.
Also, you brought up two of the next two C's after this, of community and communication.
Okay.
So going back to compassion and how that sort of threads through all of this. I also really would like to underscore what you said. I love the phrasing of trusting that the base is doing their best. So people are going to fall sometimes. You're going to get dropped. It's not, it's about that trust that the person is doing their best to pay attention, is doing everything that they are able to do
Right.
toward safety.
Yep. And part of that comes with realizing limitations. It's we have this phrase in acrobatics. It's called we say practice accurate self-assessment, right? So if you are you've never done hand-to-hand before, and you want to try to do hand-to-hand, there are ways to practice it safely, right? Where you can build up to doing it standing. However, like, we want you to do it safely, learn the ways to do it, be safe, build foundations. But like, you as a practitioner of this need to accurately self-assess and realize that as of right now, you are not able to do this in a safe manner. So like, maybe you should take a step back, ask for, maybe get some training, or just ask somebody to share knowledge with you, whatever it is. It's just, we practice that a lot. And it's definitely, when you find people that accurate self-assess, you build more trust in those people, because they're not going to go out and try to do skills or things that they know they're not quite ready to do,
Is that a lot of what trust is for you, is accurate self-assessment, trusting yourself, trusting your own self-assessment, trusting other people to be as honest and as self-reflective as they can with their own self-assessment?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I look for that in just people in general in the real world. And it is crazy how all of this is so intertwined. It's all about society. And, there is a lot that can be said from interactions with people in acro and whether I would trust them in the real world, but also it's, when I do live my life in general, I'm actually very skeptical because of my career. And I've seen a lot of, scams, a lot of these things that are meant to prey on people. And so having those sides, inherently distrusting people, and then also being forced to trust, in that other physical realm, it makes for an interesting personality I have, I think. So, but yeah, it's definitely, I do think that I would say I tend to trust acrobats more than just general people, which is kind of a interesting thing to even say. I never necessarily thought about that.
Interesting. Yeah. Well, there is that piece of trusting a shared experience and trusting that this person has navigated some of a physical sort of, what are my yeses, what are my nos, what are my self-limiting beliefs, what are my real limitations, and so you can feel more at ease of they've done their own self-assessing. Or maybe also it's like they've done it in a language. I relate to that of like, oh, we've done this in similar languages here.
Yeah.
And also that point too of interactions you have with people in an acro setting, and then that reflecting, or the how you do anything is how you do everything.
Right.
And so getting to practice again, like having this safe container to practice, what is that gut feeling that comes up about trusting this person or not, or trusting this moment or myself, or
Right. And I think trusting yourself is really huge. And that's what, we were discussing previously is, as someone who might be more advanced in, some of the skills in the community, really being able to help people when they have these limiting beliefs, and, having compassion for them and knowing where they're at in their journey, whether that journey is, trying to build back, from maybe like what we were talking about earlier, the a sexual assault, and you're trying to build, trust in people again and touch, maybe you don't know that about them, but just you can see the way that they interact, and being compassionate and supportive is really something that's very big in our community. It's, we're a very inclusive community. Really try to make sure that everyone who is joining is, getting to experience what we've all been able to experience, so it's such a great community. It's exhilarating, and it's not without its problems, for sure. There's a lot of issues that, just like any societal kind of group, so it's
and
just,
then it becomes about how those challenges are navigated and how they're acknowledged. For my experience of safety and compassion, it's how they get acknowledged, how much they're acknowledged, how
yeah.
accurately self-assessed that it's acknowledged. And there's also that thread too of that feeling that people experience. Part of my experience of acro communities and movement communities in general being so welcoming is that that sort of, wow, I've had this experience of trust, which shattered some of my trust and then made this other trust in myself and understanding me. And
Right.
how do I pass this experience along to someone else? How do I help them on that experience too, like you do with teaching, of being there with people as they navigate their self-assessment of what is this limiting belief, and also what is the challenge to that maybe I can do more, maybe there is more space here.
Yeah. And what I found that's been really interesting about what you just said is, so part of being, let's say, a community leader or somebody who's a little bit more advanced is knowing how much to maybe push somebody through their limiting belief, right? Because you never want to like cross that line of forcing them to do something they don't want. Now, what I've really enjoyed about figuring this out is 9 times out of 10, when you bring somebody else in, like a spotter, to be hands-on, to really kind of help them and know that like we are all working together to, one, keep you safe. That's number one. But also, two, to help you be able to execute this skill and, and do it in a safe manner, but also you still get to experience that. Like that has been, and that's always like, it's so exhilarating to people. And it is funny how, when you bring people in and really try to make somebody feel safe, they're willing to push their boundaries a little bit more. And, that's just, it's just, I really enjoy that part. And it's just another part of like building that trust and building, a safety mindset, and knowing that these people are, out for your, well-being, but also to help push you along a little bit. So.
Totally supportive, challenging, and also challenging that, like some of the things from cybersecurity and other parts of humaning that are, there's people who are out to get me or out to get other people or to prey on people, and having a place to remember, hey, there's people who care, there's people who are encouraging, who are here to share. I feel like that's a lot of it with this compassion theme is that quote, the Buddha quote of something along the lines of, you can light a million, 1,000, you can light all of the candles you want from one candle without that flame decreasing. You can pass that along.
Yeah, absolutely. And, it's right now, I've been, compassion is playing such a huge role in everything, because everyone, at least in the US, is so polarized right now. And it is just like, it's ripping apart like society. It's ripping apart our community. Like I've, experienced a lot through, since COVID began. It's just really, these are very trying times, and, people are trying to work our way back to a sense of normalcy in a safe manner. And, it's just, I just really think that if we were able to, be in these groups and socialize and just kind of like let off all this steam of, being, pent up in our, COVID caves, and every community in, as far as acro goes in the United States, well, not only acro, is just trying to navigate through all of this. We're trying to, in San Diego, at least, we're trying to really maintain, our safety standards. And basically the way that I've been approaching it is I just listen to the guidance from, whatever's allowed, then, we just kind of do that. But it's being able to say now, maybe, I've seen a couple people, and that maybe we've had some, interactions on social media that weren't favorable. They weren't good. and we had, I
Such
know
a kind way of saying that. We
yeah,
had unfavorable social
yeah,
media
I'm trying to be
environment.
politically correct about it. And, you see these people in real life. And I think some of these people honestly forget that, like, like you're saying these things, you're eventually going to see these people in real life again. Like, what are you going to do then? You know? And so I think that is a little bit of compassion. It's like, it's, I forgive you. I hope that you'll forgive me. Maybe we were speaking, from, we're just irrational at the time, or, maybe we just have different beliefs, and which is okay. And like, that's the hardest part of everything right now. It's like, you know, allowing others to have differing beliefs, but it just seems like there's no gray area, and so that's, I've really tried to, like, take a step back, realize how my communication affects other people, and am I being compassionate? Am I showing empathy? Am I showing sympathy? Why, whatever it is, how am I communicating with others? And also remembering again that, like, eventually I'm going to have to see these people in real life. And, how are they going to look at me? Are they going to no longer want to do acro with me? Did I erode their trust? And I just hope that as much as I can, extend my hand and the olive branch, I guess, I hope that they will also show that same compassion to me.
I'm really, you're a human like all the humans here recording and listening.
Yeah.
So I really am glad you brought that up of the virtual world and the real life world, and how do we blend both of those, and how do we have, I'm also really glad you brought up forgiveness and how much of a piece of compassion that is.
Yeah, because I'm going to need a lot of it.
We all do. I'm yet to meet a human who hasn't fucked stuff up. And the more someone's like, no, I don't fuck stuff up for me and trust, the more I'm like, ooh, boundaries.
Yeah.
I am not in my spiritual whatever to navigate that with you. Yeah, of how do we talk about it when trust is broken, or when there is a quote unfavorable social media interaction. Yeah. Do you then have a meeting? Do you have a phone call? Do you have a whatever? And it's like, hey, I was going through X, Y, and Z on that day. Or, hey, I noticed that I maybe was projecting this past thing onto this experience. Or I was really feeling upset about the fact that we have different beliefs here, and I really care about you, and I really wish we had the same belief, and I don't know what to do about that. And like all these things that nobody knows how to navigate this stuff. No one's lived through a pandemic before. No one's like, yep, here's the rule book. Here's what we do here.
Yeah. Yeah, I did. I actually had one of these interactions very recently. So we saw each other in real life, and we discussed it, and, this person stuck to their beliefs, and I also stuck to mine. But, he said, look, maybe some of the language that we used was not appropriate. And, it was aggressive, and this is how it made me feel. Okay, well, here's why I felt that way, and so on and so forth. And in the end, we agreed to disagree, but we also agreed that moving forward, that we wouldn't have to be weird around each other. But it was something that I do think that we needed to address, and there's going to be a couple of other people that, I'm definitely going to have these types of discussions with. And, just being able to respect others' opinions, is, it's hard. It's hard sometimes, but being able to respect them as just people, that's what, I'm really working on, is trying to maybe separate some of their beliefs, because, while these people might have different, beliefs than me, I think probably 99.9% of them have never done anything wrong to me, so why would I condemn them for, having, never having done anything wrong to me? Like, they've always been nice to me. Why would I then, yeah, you believe something different than I am, or than I do. So I don't know. That's been a tough battle, personal struggle.
I feel that one, and I see that too as another form of compassion, respecting someone else in their beliefs. And I'm also again hearing that part you brought up of trusting that everyone's doing their best, trusting that people's intentions are coming from good, quote unquote, whatever good is, places.
Right. Well, and I think it filters back um, to acrobatics in this way. I'm curious as to when we, kind of start working together, if people will have lost trust in me, due to, maybe some of my beliefs. So I'm curious as to if that will translate into acrobatics, because, I'm still the same base. I'm still going to work to keep my flyers safe at all costs. And that is no matter what interaction I've had with anyone ever. But I also am curious as to other people who might not have that same outlook, and maybe they're angry at someone that has, and I would like to think, I would really hope that no one would ever intentionally hurt somebody. But it is unfortunately, not outside the realms of possibilities. But all we can do as, community leaders in the acro community is really just, trying to educate people, trying to, talk about it and be like, look, you may have had these, let's call them unfavorable social media interactions, do not let that affect the safety of this art, because that's what it's all based on is. And it might be, it honestly might be us telling people that, don't do acrobatics with somebody that you've had these interactions with until you've, talked about it and really made sure that you've gotten over it. Because that's a scary thought, and that's actually not even something that I've thought about previously. So thank you for bringing me on, because it's
You're talking just to, because I feel like there's pieces of the story or things in the community here that I'm unaware of
right, yeah,
potentially for
yeah,
someone basing without the intention of, my number one job is to keep the flyer safe as base.
right, yeah,
And so then how does everyone practice their own accurate self-assessment about, okay, well, I do or don't feel safe with this person.
right,
And then also as a community, how do people potentially navigate, oh, several people have had a similar experience with this person. How do we
right,
address that? Or how does this person address their self-assessment of
yeah,
if this is something that they are with the physical, emotional, spiritual bandwidth
right,
to do in a
and
way that is
yeah,
compassionate and trusting. And
yeah, absolutely.
I'm
So
really, these are blending of compassion, communication, community here, really,
yeah,
how those
yeah,
all come together
for sure.
with this art.
It's and we have this group it's a Facebook group. It's called Safety and Acro. And it is definitely something that, you know, not even a joke. After we're done recording right now, I'm going to go on and probably discuss this, because, we as community leaders, we really want to make sure that anytime anyone anywhere is practicing acrobatics, that they are feeling safe. And that does not only have to do with physical safety. We're huge on emotional safety, and we're just always making sure that people are concentrating on the number one thing is safety. The number two thing is, performing acrobatics correctly, so um, it's something that I think we need to address moving forward. So,
which again, for the trust part of this and compassion is part of what fosters trust with me in a community is communities that communicate and address and take the time and space to reflect instead of just continually pushing forward.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Especially with something as it is so physical and so tangible and real, and then also, like you're saying, there's this element of emotional trust too. And I know in my experiences that, like, I can in my head a moment came to mind so quickly of attempting a new trick with someone and knowing that without that emotional trust and without also being able to talk it through with them to some level of me having my first response be like, no, fuck that, I'm not going to do that, what? And then, okay, well, wait, what are you actually asking me to do? How can we count it out? Okay, well, I can hold this person's hand, and all of those elements that weave together for the overall trust.
Right. And another part of this, with, compassion and trust is, when you work with someone, and let's say this is new partnerships or brand new, or I'm sorry, or already established partnerships, you may not have the trust that you can give that person feedback. And like, that's one big thing with acrobatics also is feedback. So basically, we'll attempt a skill and we'll come down and we'll say, okay, it's a real quick assessment. It's like, what happened? Okay, well, if it's always one-sided, if one person is not willing to listen to the other, there's a lot of there's a lack of trust, that they're going to be heard, because what if the flyer's feeling something and isn't able to say what they're feeling, and then something happens. It's like that could have been what's the word, prevented. Geez, sorry. Yeah, that could have been prevented easily with just some communication. But there are a lot of partnerships where communication is not it's not good, it's not promoted, and so it's tough, and also there's also a little bit of an intimidation factor. So let's say I'm teaching a class or whatever, and someone wants to do a skill with me that maybe I taught, and like we do something and I mess up, and they'll come down and be like, oh, I'm sorry, I messed that up. And you would see the look on their face is like, oh my gosh, like I thought it was me. And they would even be afraid to tell me that, like, they thought maybe I did something wrong, right? Whereas like I'm open to realizing that, like, maybe, just maybe, I didn't do something perfectly. I'm not infallible. And especially with acrobatics, it's not something that is going to be perfect every repetition. So, building that trust, having compassion for whoever you're working with, it's like, it's a continual process, and it's just something that, we're always working on.
Continual self-assessment and accurate trust assessment of, am I trusting myself? Do I trust this person? Is there space do I trust the space to really talk about what's going on? I'm really glad too, again, for that point of when you're teaching someone and that intimidation factor where, and I really also see that reflected in a male-bodied, female-bodied dynamic of, and also to tag back to things with PTSD from sexual assault and learning to communicate, even just in the most basic of, hey, will you move your feet here? Can you move your hands like this? Or will you rotate this a little? And having that, the space, the compassion there to communicate it and to know that I feel like where the compassion comes in is the reception, the trust about the reception. And so like you're saying of how do we have the emotional trust too. And part of that being we talk about how we're all human, how we're all going to mess up sometimes, and it's even if it is one person has been doing something for they've done this thousands of times more than someone else, it could still happen anyway at any moment.
Right. That's some of the hardest partnerships that I've seen. It's kind of like hard to listen to their interactions, are the partnerships, and this is just also in real life, where one person is and they think they're infallible. Like, if you just did this, then this would happen, right? It's like, me, I'm good. Like, I did everything right.
I don't
Never.
need to change anything about what I do.
Right. And
it can't possibly be me also contributing to this interaction.
right. No, that's impossible. So, it's just really, I like, that's one of the reasons why I like acrobatics a little bit more than cheerleading. In cheerleading, I found that there was a lot of that. It was a lot of the base saying, just stay tight and I'll throw you. And basically, if the skill didn't happen, then, it was because you weren't tight. That was my personal,
your self-assessment or
yes,
your general assessment of it too.
Right. And that's what, I got a lot of that. And that's one of the things that I really like about acrobatics is it's a partnership. So when we say that we have a pair that, we're with, that I say that's our partnership. And we work together to make skills happen, right? It's not just you stay tight and I'm going to throw you. It's like we are working together to physically accomplish a skill. So it's one of the things that I really like about acrobatics in general. Not to say that there's not that dynamic still, but I just found it less prevalent in acrobatics.
Which to me feels a lot more compassionate, that partnership mentality, that we're co-creating this. It's not a, hey, I'm just in this box doing this role and you're just in this box doing this role, and
right,
we know how it's going to go every time.
Yeah. Yep. Absolutely.
How do you foster that then in your teaching?
So in my teaching,
kind of like this sort of chill approach, I'm guessing is part of it, is that you have this like, hey, I'm here, I got your back, and also it's no big deal.
Absolutely. It's, when I teach, I'm very, one of my main goals is safety, but it's also, like you said earlier, creating that space for people to, one, feel safe, two, if they don't feel safe, that they can approach me and say, hey, here's why I don't feel safe, and can you help me fix this, or can you fix this? And just it really helps me. It's very fulfilling when I've had a couple people come up to me and just tell me that, like, they felt so safe in my class, and it had nothing to do with acrobatics. It's whether it's the LGBTQ community or whoever it is, just people in general, that's the biggest compliments that I take from these classes. It's, because people are going to get skills, and I love helping people get skills, but knowing that they did it in a safe environment and that I helped foster that environment is really, it's so rewarding. And I had some kind of doubts about my own empathy, sympathy, compassion previously because of when I was married. I just had a lot of issues with that, and I kind of thought that maybe I was incapable of empathy, sympathy, compassion. These things, I genuinely thought that I was incapable of it. I thought about, like, not dating anymore seriously. It made me question, could I still be a teacher and create that space? And that's another way that acrobatics has helped me, is really realizing that, I have that in me, and I have, you know, I've learned from my past mistakes, and I've grown, and, I am capable of that. So.
Self-forgiveness, to forgive others. And also what I'm hearing is how a lot of what you end up teaching is accurate self-reflection. And then also part of why people feel safe around you as a teacher is because they can sense and know that you're also practicing what you're teaching of
Right.
accurate self-reflection.
I hope that is true. I feel like it's true. And I hope that I continue to do that as I move forward teaching. So.
Yeah, well, I'm excited to get to take a class with you whenever I am next in San Diego.
Yeah.
And I would be curious, kind of as a like tying this up with the pretty bow of we've figured out compassion and here's this podcast of
yeah.
How do you feel like forgiveness weaves in? So for me and my like background is, and I can only imagine too with your background in the Navy, where like hearing the word assessment and accurate self can bring up a lot of that sort of polarization of like there's a right and there's a wrong, and if you did something wrong then you're bad and wrong. And how do you navigate forgiveness in that self-assessment?
I think that forgiveness actually lends to compassion and empathy and sympathy, because if you can forgive yourself, then you can grow from that, and you can build compassion for others. If you can forgive others for what they've done, then you're having compassion for them. It's realizing what struggles they've went through, and empathizing and sympathizing with that, and really recognizing that we all go through things, and you never know where someone is at in their life. That's so I have this thing, as I've grown, I try to give people 2 chances to make a first impression, right? Because like sometimes people have bad days, and if everyone judged me on my first impression, I don't know if I'd have a lot of friends because I'm a very loud, kind of extrovert. Sometimes I shoot from the hip, and I maybe it's too much for people, but I do appreciate that people have gone on and gotten to know me, and do realize that I can also be a very compassionate person who will listen, and who is willing to grow from things that I've realized that maybe were wrong. Learn from my mistakes, forgive you for making mistakes. So it's kind of the evolution.
Which again, to that piece that you said so importantly about remembering that all of us have failed and will fail, and this idea that anybody goes and does everything quote perfectly all the time, ends up creating a lot of division.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And making it a lot harder to have fun and say, let's play, let's turn on a song and flow around in an acro flow.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. Compassion as self-assessment, as trust assessment, I'm feeling too.
Yeah.
And having compassion too then for those moments when you feel like, oh, I put my trust in the wrong person or the wrong place or the wrong thing. And to have compassion for that too, to say, okay, well, here's more information. Here's how I can practice this moving forward. How do I keep going, knowing that I'm gonna keep messing up and keep learning.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. Where can people find you? I'll put all your information in the description too. Your Acro Airlines on Instagram.
Yeah, that's primarily it. Acro Airlines. Um, my Facebook can get a little interesting. So it's Ryan Bro Airlines Gibson on Facebook. Um, but yeah, I like Instagram's probably my jam because it just is acrobatics photos and fun stories of what I'm doing, from day to day. So that's it's a little less wild. The Facebook is the wild wild west. So
Where there's the group of how we talk about trust in the groups and how do
yeah,
we build this community.
yeah, that's going to be that like safety and acro and all the Facebook groups. There's if pretty much if people are looking to get into acrobatics, a really good way to find a group in your city is to just look up like let's say Chicago, just type in acro yoga Chicago or whatever your city is, just enter your city and 9 times out of 10 you're going to find an acro yoga group. So.
I'm really excited to see how you keep bringing in compassion and trust and both having the fun and doing the fun tricks and also having the conversations that say, hey, wait, what did you mean here? How do we go about this?
Yeah. I'm excited too.
Yeah. I really appreciate you coming on the podcast and sharing. And I look forward to podcasting with you again and acroing with you. Maybe we can do an acro flow podcast sometime.
That'd be awesome. Yeah, I'd love that.
What is trust to you, person on the street?
I like it.
Thank you so much again.
Absolutely. Thank you, Annie.
Thanks for tuning in and thanks for being you.